What a cool episode we get with a bunch of character background development, and really just kind of the mind games continue with this Hunter exam.
Hunter, Hunter, Episode 4, Hope and Ambition.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and the tantalizing and the epically test-worthy tale of Hunter x Hunter. The last episode, of course, saw us really, really getting introduced to a number of the different potential hunters that have showed up for the exam. 405 of them, to be exact, that are participating, at least in this particular one. And we met some different characters, Killua, of course, and Hisoka, the magician, and then there was just kind of this weird-looking guy that was the examiner, and Satotes is his name, Satotes. And anyway, and then the episode left off with everybody just having to kind of run and chase and follow along with him, and that's where we left off. And this episode picks up right where it left off, and really this episode should be called the running episode, or the jogging episode, or the running man episode. It is kind of neat because you got to think about things in terms of tests. If you know what you have to do, if you know you have to study for a 100 problem test, or a some kind of exam that you have to do, and you have some basic parameters, you know what to study for, it's much easier to study for, right? But if they just tell you, well, you got to come in for a test, and you say, well, what's the content going to be? It's about things that we've covered. And they say, well, how many questions? Well, I don't know. You know, when you go in, you don't know what to prepare for and how to prepare. So that's exactly what this test is. It's part an endurance test, because this Satotes has just got them running, right? And they hit about the 40-kilometer mark, and the little guy Nicholas on his computer, he's sitting there and he's, looking up past tests and everything else, and averaging that about 40, and figuring in his head with all of his numbers game that about 40 kilometers is where it usually ends, and this and that, And you see people starting to drop out from fatigue, because 40 kilometers is a far run, man. I've ran a 5K with my wife before, and I'm not much for running unless I'm being chased. But it's not easy. I couldn't imagine 40 kilometers. And they wind up actually in total going like double that. But that's besides the point. This Satotes, it's kind of neat because you see him talking in his head a little bit about, okay, I wonder, how many are actually going to make it, how many are going to keep up. And you see 1.2, and this is after, I believe, it was after the 40-kilometer mark, a few minutes into it, where Leorio, he looks like he's done, man. He's just about to give up. He's like, I can't do this anymore. Only one rookie in every 3 years, and he's psyching himself out. He's talking about all the negatives, right? And so anyway, we also have a point too where that Killua, the kid with the skateboard, he's actually riding on his skateboard, and right before that whole scenario happens, and Leorio is telling him that that's not right, that he's using the skateboard, and he's like, why not? And we wind up seeing him and Gon interact a little bit and find out that they're both 12. Now, I have a quick bone to pick here, and I hope somebody can explain this to me. Now, supposedly, Gon talked about how, like, 10 or 12 years ago, his father wound up, catching the Lord of the Lake and then going in, or whatever he did to go off and then do the Hunter exam, right, leaving his child behind. And he was 12, it says, when he did that. So I don't know if this is a special world where 12-year-olds have kids, but I think that there's a little bit of a gap in a little flaw in the logic over there, because if there's people having kids at 12 years old, man, I've heard about, like, teen pregnancies and shit, but 12? And I watched it again. He clearly goes and says that his father wound up leaving to go become a hunter at 12 years old, and, wound up passing and everything else, and doesn't even know much about him. But nonetheless, though, Killua winds up getting off his skateboard once he finds out that both him and Gon are 12, and he's like, hey, that's cool, I'll run with you, so they're jogging along. And then that's when Leorio goes and pretty much gives up, and we wind up getting, it's nice, Gon stops for him, slows down and stops for him, and so does Killua. And then he winds up going, and Leorio kind of gets an extra burst of energy, and something tells him to go on, and he starts cruising forward, but leaves his briefcase back. And a couple episodes ago, I had talked about how Gon was swinging around using this grappling hook like it's his damn fishing pole. And I don't know how I didn't notice it when we saw it briefly in episode 2, because he goes and whips it out there, the fishing pole he used to catch the Lord of the Lake, of course, in the first episode, and grabs the briefcase of Leorio, and then everybody goes running on, So you get to see a number of different cool things that happen, though, as far as character development, because then later on, Leorio and Kurapika, they're talking, and Kurapika explains that he wants to, that basically what happens is he wants to go off and avenge his the death of a lot of his clansmen, or his family name, because his particular family, I believe Kurta, I believe it is, I think it was Kurta if I remember correctly, the Phantom Troop went and targeted their family because I guess their eyes, they when they get distressed or like, you know, basically they're like in danger or whatever, these eyes turn this like, I don't know, one of the most beautiful bright colors of crimson in the world or something, and they literally killed and slaughtered his clan, Kurapika's clan, to take their eyes, right? And I guess sell them on the black market or something. So some sick shit going on here, you know? So nonetheless, though, like I said, there's a bunch of character development as far as that goes, and you find out that Leorio said he was in it for the money and the fame and everything else, and he is, but it's for the right reasons. When he was younger, we find out that he had maybe some kind of childhood friend, a brother, somebody that he cared for that wound up having some kind of disease and didn't have the money for the operation or whatever he needed to get fixed and died. So his whole thing is, you know what, money is what the whole world revolves around, okay? So if I become a famous hunter and I have money, I can then go and be a doctor, because he wanted to be a doctor initially so he could just give away his, to people that are less fortunate, to give away his practices, I guess, to so to speak, and be able to perform surgeries and operations. So very, very cool stuff, because you see that there's more to the guy. He's not just this kind of stuffy asshole, you know. So anyway, they wind up getting it, and then after a while, they start running for like 5 minutes. They're running up steps, right? And I'm like, oh my God, you know. I'm just watching them run. I'm getting tired. I'm like... So they finally get to the top of the steps, and we see that a number of people have dropped out and dropped back. And we wind up getting Satotes goes and explains that, hey, listen, we're in this area that was called Swindler's Swamp. Can't lose sight of me when you're in here, because basically there's like these beasts and demons and what have you, magical creatures, and they play tricks on you in your mind, right? And I think it's Leorio is like, yeah, how could anybody play tricks on us if we know that it's coming, right? So all of a sudden, this guy comes out from kind of like the side of it. They've emerged now from this tunnel, and they're all standing around. This guy comes from around the corner, and he's got this knocked out ape-looking thing with him, or whatever that he's holding. And he says, he's all beat up looking, and he says, no, this guy's an imposter, and he's trying to, obviously get everybody thinking what I didn't know if it was a trick or not at first. It's all these tests are cool though, but he's like, this guy's an imposter. He's actually a man-faced ape, and this and that. It's because he run, and he explains his weird run where he kind of kicks his legs out and everything. So some people are starting to doubt and starting to think, man, this is who is the real one, right? And this is right after Satotes told them that that it was to be careful, because obviously there's tricksters and you got to stay close to them and everything else, and they'll play mind tricks, mind games and this and that. So all of a sudden this is going on, and everybody's looking back and forth like, who do we trust, right? And that dude Hisoka, the magician, just goes like Gambit from the X-Men and just whips out these cards that he's got. And the one guy that was claiming that he had been beat up and this and that, everything else, winds up going and taking these to the chest and falls over and dies. You look over and the camera pans over to Satotes, and he's holding the cards. He caught them. So then Hisoka goes on to explain, even though it was kind of an unorthodox way that he did it, he goes, listen, hunters, all examiners are hunters, right? And that attack that I used, a hunter could block, but a normal person wouldn't be able to. So that's how he weeded out who it was. So I'm like, man, glad your gamble paid off, And then Satotes goes and warns him, and he says, you try to attack me again, buddy, and you're going to be disqualified, right? So he's probably got the bio on this guy, So a very cool episode all in all. It ends up shortly after that as Satotes goes and starts trotting off into this misty sort of area, into this Swindler's Swamp, and says, everybody stay close, because out here, if you lose sight of me, you'll wind up losing your life, So very neat episode. And I guess my episode question is really going to be, what are your thoughts now that on Leorio, now that you know a bit of his background, and that the guy's not just a pompous dick that just wants, fame and fortune. Like, he does, but he wants it for the right reasons, because he's run into all these roadblocks in life about people he cares about and things he's wanted to do because of money. So he realizes that although it is the root of all evil, he needs it to actually get some of the things done and accomplish some of his goals that he wants to. So let me know what your thoughts are, though, in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of yours in the next one, Nation.
Oh, here is a nice sexy picture of Mr. Shirtless Ace. Go over and follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well.